welcome back to Ozark Garden Talk with White River Nursery. I'm Sarah.
I'm Charity.
And I'm Alex.
And today we've asked our customers, we've been getting a lot of questions about some problem areas, and some people are dealing with all these temperature swings that we have. Either it's down to 0 or it's above 100 in the summer.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, we have these long dry spells. So people have some challenging areas, and we've asked for input on what their problem areas are and what suggestions we might have. These are the kind of questions we answer all the time in the nursery.
Yeah.
And we thought we'd start off by talking about some real life examples of problem areas that people have, and maybe things that they can do to overcome that and make it a little bit easier of a landscape to manage.
Yeah.
Which we really don't want people to have to work all day and work in their yard all day. You know, it's supposed to be enjoyable. It's not supposed to be a challenge. So, so we had some questions from customers. We reached out on social media, and I'm just going to jump right into them.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so right along, Kit,
Yes.
Kiki. Anyway, on Facebook had asked, with temperatures getting hotter and longer dry spells where we are, we're either asked to conserve water, or you do, being a good shepherd and mindful of water use. What plants are going to be beneficial and helpful as the climate is changing here?
Well, I mean, one thing you need to think about is the resilience of our native plants. I mean, so many of them are really kind of adapted to this. They have much deeper, more extensive root systems. They're much better able to take care of themselves. You know, it's some of that super lush stuff that doesn't necessarily come from this area. It tends to take a lot more upkeep during those drought periods.
Yeah. Right plant, right place. That's kind of what it goes back to. And natives have been here longer than us. Mm-hmm. So that tells us the history supports planting them. Specific to the droughts or floods, because that's the other end of the spectrum.
Yeah.
And if anybody remembers last spring, we had some of those that led us straight into the drought, which was fun.
Yep.
So one of the things to keep in mind is some of the permaculture tenets. If you think about and read about permaculture, whenever we design our landscapes, of course, we're care for earth, care for others is part of the overriding goals. Excuse me. But the resiliency part in permaculture is to plant many things to do the same job, and then plant many things. So if you have the dry thing, you don't want to plant just one plant for that. You want to have safety nets of other plants that can come in. So, and we do this all the time, regardless of if it's native or not, in recommendations. It's like a monoculture of a hedge of boxwoods, for example. If the boxwood blight that is present across the country now hits one, it'll just move down the line.
Right.
But if you have boxwoods and some hollies, they don't share the same diseases.
Right.
So that helps you with resiliency in the landscape. So the same thing can be said with the dry or the wet. You know, plants that like those conditions also allow you, if you plant different kinds, different species, if something is failing because it's too dry, then the others can come through.
Some built-in redundancy. And I mean, and also just some of the core basic stuff with gardening, like improving soil, adding some organic material to the soil can really, basically it increases pore space and water holding capacity and allows for better root development anyway. But also just mulch. I mean, if you have a very dense native bed, you don't really need to mulch that. You basically have living mulch. I think, that's a little bit what you were talking about too.
What do they call that? They say that like your soil is your water bank, that you're putting, you're putting keeping the water held there.
And as a general rule, I mean, exposed soils, if you can see the soil and it's just dirt, that is going to lose water at a much higher rate than if you have it covered with various types of foliage from a dense planting. You can think of it as kind of preventing airflow across the surface of the soil, which is carrying that moisture away. You're also shading the soil, preventing all that evaporation. So things like that help a lot.
Yeah. I like those analogies of like bare soil is like leaving your wallet open
Right.
in the wind or something
Right.
like that. It's just carrying that all off.
Yeah.
And plus giving seeds, like weed seeds,
Yes.
a place to germinate.
Right.
Absolutely.
I hate that.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, there are plenty of plants out there that can handle dry conditions that we sell, and also, our natives. I would recommend looking at prairie plants because
Yeah.
they tend to
Exactly.
be, I mean, there is wet prairie, okay, so
Right.
you want to be careful, but it's really interesting that, like, things that we talk about on this podcast all the time and here in the nursery, goldenrod, coneflower, these staple of the native gardens, there are species of these plants, of these genuses that are more healthy in drier versus wetter
Yeah.
locations of the same plant. So
Like
For sure.
goldenrod is a good example.
Yeah.
There's I can't remember the exact species, but there's a couple. One that tolerates the wetter soils a lot more than
exactly.
the dry. Yeah.
And so it still allows us to provide our local pollinators
Right.
with the goldenrod flowers that they want and need, but can be applied to if you have a low spot in the area that's going to stay flooded. There's definitely some species of coneflowers that would do better there than the drier locations.
Yeah.
And we can help you with that kind of on a more specific basis.
Yeah.
It's a little hard to go through a whole plant list on that.
Yeah.
But
I do feel like it's worth mentioning. I mean, a lot of those prairie plants, they're going to have a range of acceptable soil conditions that they can tolerate for a given period of time. And that range is going to be larger
Right.
than a whole lot of, like, don't get me wrong, I love zonal geraniums, red geraniums, in a pot. But their resilience in the landscape and their tolerance of wet and dry is less than a lot of those prairie plants
Yes.
that are
Yeah.
just,
Right.
they can take a lot more extreme.
Yeah. I agree. I think it's all about like planning for the right spaces, and if you do have something that you just love, like a geranium, keep it close to your house where you're
Exactly.
gonna see it and walk by it and want to baby it,
Right.
whatever
And
it is.
Actually remember to water it
Yeah.
instead of
Yeah.
way out back by the fence. Yeah.
Yeah, we all know those. Dragging a hose or whatever it's going to take to get those things watered. But a follow up to this was I've heard about native plant ranges expanding north to us, but I haven't heard much about what plants are not expected to thrive going forward and their range expanding north away from us, and increasing the cold and hot extremes not hospitable for them. I know here, I mean, we've moved from like a zone 6B to a 7A now is what we're in.
Technically, but
We're
Technically.
skeptical.
Exactly. I was going to say, so many people will just look at that range, and if they're new to gardening especially, they'll say, oh, we're 7 now, so we can trust all the zone 7 plants. And I know here, we really don't trust the zone 7 plants. If that's their cap of their northern range, we're like, meh. We get too
or if you plant
frequent.
them, you want to pay attention to where.
Yes, it
Yeah.
needs to be protected somewhat. I mean, just to have them exposed is kind of,
Yep.
Yeah.
Because we're going to probably hit 0 or negative something
Yeah.
at least once or twice in a winter still.
right. And when those cold snaps are dry, that's increasingly problematic for the
Yeah.
plants.
And, regarding the question directly, it's kind of a complicated question to answer as far as like what plants may be transitioning north out of our zone. It tends to be the case that the extreme cold is a much more limiting factor than the heat.
Yeah.
There are exceptions to that, and you're going to see a lot more stress on some plants that maybe are not as heat tolerant as we go forward. But I feel like there's more things moving potentially north into zones that they previously didn't grow as well in, as opposed to things moving out. You know what I'm saying? Like, the heat is not necessarily reducing the amount of plants that we can grow as much as it is increasing them.
I mean,
Or they might
But-
need a little bit more protection from the
Exactly.
sun and the heat of summer or
But
something like that.
You guys, we all work out in it. I mean, it seems to me that, this is not a linear thing. It's not just getting warmer in the winter, warmer in the summer, warmer in the spring. It's the extremes.
It's the
Extremes.
volatility.
It's the swings that we're seeing. And today it's supposed to be almost 80, and we have some low 20s in the forecast
it's
coming right up.
yeah,
It's
within
got to
the
be a
5 day.
shock to the plants.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just hard it's hard for us to
I
adjust.
think one other thing to point out is that plants don't read tags. And they
Right.
also are native, but the native ranges are the things that we get to look at that are classified native by BONAP or, some of these sites that we go to is quite limited, actually. Native plants don't know state borders. They don't know county
Right.
borders. They go to the microclimates that they can grow in. And so it's a good start to know zone and where it was natively seen and documented. But man, is that limited. And if you get in the weeds on that,
Yeah.
I mean, it's just there's so much more unknown than known on native ranges.
Right.
So keep that in mind. It's possible
And
we limit ourselves.
ranges of widespread perennials, like I don't know, Echinacea purpurea or something. It is shifted up and down over time anyway.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I mean, there's some of that. There are places where things were historically native where they're no longer present.
Correct.
It's it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, it would. Let's see. Well, this is kind of a good starting point for a lot of folks, but this Dixon 1687 said, "I'm new to native gardening and landscaping, and one thing I'm having a hard time with is learning to ID my soil type."
Well, that's a pretty easy one.
Yeah.
Soil testing at the Washington County Extension Office. It is a fantastic service they provide free of charge. Every county in Arkansas
Yeah.
has an office.
Across
It
the
is.
state.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's a joint. I believe it's jointly funded by the U of A and the state of Arkansas. Largely taxpayer funded. So they are there to serve you. They want to do it. They've got a great video on their website on exactly how they would prefer that you take the samples. I would say do that now. It can take them, when they get busy, up to like 2 weeks. So, get that done. You'll get a lot of really good information. And if you need help reading the sheet that they give you, bring it on in. We'll take a look.
Yeah,
We'll
and
talk to
your
you about it.
extension office can help.
Yeah, they
where
can
you
help
drop
too.
the soil sample off. They're very good at that.
They are.
Yeah.
I think that the home tests aren't, from what I've read, they're not really
No.
that accurate. There's some stuff out there you can do with purple cabbage. It's like, the whole litmus test from
Yeah.
a high school or, maybe even elementary school science. And yeah, it's fun. It's not going to be accurate, and it's not going to give you enough information to use, honestly. So the same with your soil composition. I mean, there's so much in our soil, and if we don't have it doing well and good for the plant that you're trying to grow, you're already at a disadvantage. So really the only way to know is a soil test.
Yeah.
Yeah, as a guy who worked in a soil biology lab for 2.5 years, those home tests drive me completely crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, the lengths that the university, that the extension office goes through to actually get, good, solid readings, it's a whole nother thing. I mean,
Yeah.
And your tax dollars already pay for that. Why,
That's true.
Why pay
Yeah.
for
That's true.
something that's subpar?
And do watch the video, because there is a right way to do it, just like everything.
Yeah.
And so if you really want a good read, you have to do
Give
it.
them
It's not
the right
hard. You just
input,
have to
yeah.
do it.
And I'll throw one other thing in there. I mean, the soil testing, it's going to give you your pH, kind of your nutrient balance, things like that, things that you might need to correct based on what you're growing, which they will ask you what you're growing. And so that's important. It kind of varies a lot. If you're growing blueberries, very different from growing native plants,
Sure.
depending on the type of plant. But also just call down there and have a conversation with them. When you're talking about soil composition, like clay versus sand versus
Right.
whatever, first of all, they have a pretty good idea of the most common soil types around here, but also there is a Washington County and every county soil survey, which is a map, and they can actually look at it and say, oh, you're in the one place in Fayetteville that has squishy, loamy, beautiful soil, that one square block. And, you know, they have a lot of really good information at the Extension office, and they have volunteers there every day answering the phone, so give them a ring.
Okay, good info. Okay, another question. We have Farming at 50. Asked, we have an area that doesn't drain well. It's also home to a few well-established cypress trees. It gets a moderate amount of sun, but we'd really like to add anything to help absorb the water, make pollinators happy, shrubs, plants. We're open.
So now we've gone from dry to wet.
Right.
Yes, exactly.
That sounds like the Ozarks.
Yes.
So I guess I would lead off by saying it's difficult to really fully dry out a landscape with just plants. I've had people ask me about that before. You know, your cypress trees are pulling a ton of water out of the soil, but if you have a big wet area, that's a large reservoir of water. So you may not ever fully correct that if your goal is to make it dry. That said, there are a bunch of cool native shrubs that do really well in wet situations. Button bush is the first thing that comes to mind.
Definitely.
We had so much fun last year watching those moths on the button bush.
Yeah.
They are a fantastic host plant for certain pollinators.
Huge pollinator magnet.
Yes.
All kinds of pollinators visit.
They have kind of a short bloom time, but they are so cool. They look like little spaceships.
Yep.
To me, they look alien. Absolutely
Smells
love
good
them.
too.
Yep. And well, on that note, witch hazel is another one that I always see growing around creeks and rivers and things like that. And
Yeah.
what else you got? I know
Well,
you got a list.
you could do, you know, if it's not complete bog, you could do summer sweet because it does like a lot of moisture, but I don't think I would put it in the lowest spot. Our classic sweet spire would go crazy and beautiful in the spring or late spring with the bloom, and then the fall color would just be great. We have right now just a few left of our local grown native spirea. That one
Is the hardtack?
It is. Hardtack is the common. I think that's tomentosa, but I'm getting confused. That one has a almost an astilbe bloom. So it's like pink. It is fragrant and it's really cool. And I mean, like if I had your area, that's what I'd be planting because it's really fun. And all of these things, because they do like the moisture that we've mentioned so far, will sucker and continue to fill in. So, you know, you get it established and you probably got it pretty well taken care of.
Right.
That's one of my favorite things about this. I love sweet spire. I mean, they're so pretty, and the pollinators love them. But yeah, they're gonna kind of create a root mat on that landscape. And honestly, that sounds kind of beautiful underneath a bunch of bald cypress. So,
and also, I know that that particular customer is a regular customer of ours and a neighbor, and I know that she would probably be really excited to think about maybe a frog pond. And I know she's already gone singing. I'm sure like everybody has.
Just embrace.
Yeah.
Just go for it. I mean, you got cypress growing. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So create some more habitat locations that maybe you could visit and sit by
I love
and
that
enjoy.
idea. As opposed to fighting it, you know, kind
just
of embrace it.
Yeah, and the
sounds
more,
beautiful.
You know, people always get concerned about the bog areas and holding water because of mosquitoes.
Right.
Yeah.
The thing is if we plant enough plants that bring in all the things that eat
frogs.
mosquitoes, then it balances out. We have to be a little patient.
That's
but
right.
It will take care of itself.
That's why,
So.
I mean, you don't really see mosquito larvae in ponds because you have established populations of dragonfly larvae, tadpoles, little minnows,
Ooh,
you
she
know.
could have newts. I had a newt last year. It was so exciting. Oh my gosh. So,
Did you get a picture of it?
I did.
Yeah.
It's like the tiniest freaking thing. Oh, love them.
So
Anyway.
cute. Nerd out on little critters. Okay, we had a question back to dry again. from an Elkins resident. I don't have a name, but we live on the side of a hill in a new mobile home. Yard is sloped, rocky, and I have at least 2 underground springs that someone wet. Okay,
Wet,
yeah.
yeah.
That trickle from spring until August.
Yeah.
So looking for plants that are hardy and attract hummingbirds and other birds.
So I
This
think
one's-
all the lists we just gave
Mm.
is
Yeah.
a good starting point.
Cardinal flower, hummingbirds.
Yeah, blue
Yeah.
and red. Depending, so we didn't get any information about sun on that.
No,
So,
not really.
If it's just blank, you've got full sun, and if you do have that good water source, the cardinal flower will do wonderfully. If it gets too dry, it might fail, but don't ask me. 'Cause I'm
Yeah,
builder.
that's kind of, that potentially is a tricky spot, because
Right.
as soon as I hear slope, I think dry.
I do too.
And then talking about the springs, it's like, okay, so it's wet part of the year and then dry in like the hottest, worst part of the year.
Yeah.
So I feel like in situations like this, a lot of times the lists that have been put together, which I don't have one in front of me, but the rain garden lists
Right.
can be
Yeah.
very helpful, because those are intended for areas that get very wet and hold some moisture for a little while and then get dry.
Dry out,
you
yeah.
know, so even things like switchgrass is on
Yeah.
there, things
I
that,
was about to start in on grasses.
okay, of course, things that can tolerate both extremes, those
Yeah.
rain garden lists are very useful.
Yeah. And I mean, there is a native grass for everything we've talked about so far.
Yeah.
And we're going to get most of them in. So,
We
yeah,
have
yeah,
a lot
I'm
of
so
grasses
excited.
on
we
their
have
way.
a big delivery of grasses coming this spring. So, so come and visit us for those problem areas, because I can give you a native grass for it. So, but the Carex family of grasses, there are some that enjoy the dry, just like I mentioned earlier. Every species within the genus, is going to do different things. But the prairie grasses like switchgrass and little blue stem will go dry, but switchgrass does have the advantage of being able to be slightly flooded and then drying out.
Right.
Big blue stem is a dry, and these are big plants, but then there's the small little caryxes that can do some of that diversification and be more of a ground cover situation for you. That's probably a very large yard. It sounds
Right.
large.
A lot of
And so you're going to
room.
have microclimates and micro conditions along that with the springs, and then maybe the rocks
Yeah, so
are
there might be
draining.
some drier
Yeah.
areas that you
Yeah.
could kind of put in drifts. I like the idea of drifts of
Yes.
plants, because I feel like that's if your goal really is to attract the birds and the pollinators,
Right.
just they can find those drifts of
Plus
cardinal
it-
flower or whatever when they're not just here and there. There's a little clump.
It's also just so much more visually impactful.
It really
looks
is.
better to mass plants most
Right.
of the
Yeah.
time. I heard Claudia talking
Yes,
about that. Like,
they
don't just
do.
put one little plant here,
Right.
one little plant there, and
The pollinators can't see it.
she
They
calls
can't.
it old lady gardening.
Yeah. I mean,
I feel like we
I've
tend to
done
do
it.
that. I tend to do that at home, because I'll just see things here and I'm like, ooh, that's pretty. I need
Right.
to add that. And I heard somebody call it a plant zoo, and I'm like, I totally have a plant zoo.
Yeah, that's true.
This and that everywhere.
Yeah, I used to say I was more of a plant collector than
Yes.
a gardener. There was
Yeah.
no design. I would just see something cool, exactly like you're saying.
Right.
I'm
Yeah.
like, I want to see what that does.
Oh, and
you
I
know?
have one spot here that something else died that I can put, fit it in.
I
Yeah.
mean, and that the onesie situation does have its use, because of course you don't want to invest in 3, 5, even 10 plants of something that you don't know if it's going to thrive.
Right.
However,
Right.
if you do a little homework ahead and you observe your location, and test your soil or dig in the soil at the very least and see what's
Yeah.
going on, and water the soil and see how it drains. Like all of these research projects that you can do that really don't take that much time.
Yeah.
And then find a plant that is theoretically going to be good in that zone. Then maybe go ahead and splurge for 3 of those. And then you
Yeah.
really love this one with that color bloom or whatever. Try it as a onesie.
Right.
Live with it for a year and see what happens, and come back and get some more.
Yeah.
But it is so true that if we don't plant more than one, they are very hard. Like the effort it takes for a native bee or even a honeybee, non-native, or a butterfly to get to that one plant, find it, feel it, taste it with its feet, all the things that they do, and then they only get the nectar from that one, and then they have to fly another 2 miles to somebody else's house. They may just fly over your one echinacea so that they can go get a bunch because of the effort it takes.
So it's not really serving its purpose in the environment.
Exactly, until you can get it to reseed or multiply,
Yeah.
which is a way to do it too.
Yeah, good points. And like you said, it is beautiful. You see, whenever we go on these garden tours or whatever, there are drifts, and it's just seems more cohesive. It ties everything together because there's blooms going at the same time.
And not a monoculture again,
Right,
like
not
we were
a
talking
monoculture.
about. But yes, having several plants in a grouping and kind of tiered, taller things behind them. Yeah.
Seems intentional. So, this was a longer question from Climb On It, and it's a little bit a few questions built into one, but he's asking about soil temperature and the impact on when to transplant, whether that makes a difference.
Maybe we should start with that one.
Yeah, let's start with that one.
So.
Yeah, he had several. Does that make a difference on most landscape plants?
It makes a huge difference with certain plants,
If you're talking about vegetable garden versus woody plants.
Exactly. I mean, if you plant tomatoes and peppers too early, even if you protect the tops and all that, and you keep them from getting just frozen down to the ground because you were very enthusiastic and planted in early April, you can basically permanently stunt your plants through the season.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't like it, and it's not the case always that when it warms up they fully recover. It can really reduce your crop yields for the entire season. Regarding tree, shrubs, and perennials, I mean, they are taking some cues from the soil temperature as to when to grow more actively. But I would make the argument that there's no problem with growing most of those woody dormant things whenever, like middle of the winter is fine.
Right. I agree.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of nice. This is one of the reasons we like doing it in the fall, is because the soil is still warm enough that you get some immediate establishment, and then you get very...
in the root zone.
Exactly. And then you get very slow motion root establishment even going through the winter, and then once it starts to warm up, you get more additional. So they're better able to take care of themselves when we get into that summer drought.
Right.
But, if I had to choose between planting in January and March, I don't think it's a huge difference.
On landscape plants.
But I would probably do it more or less as early as possible.
Yeah.
So.
On the woodies.
Yes, specifically.
There's definitely like grasses. Grasses that are warm weather versus cool weather. You will probably lose the warm weather if you planted them too early in the year, because they just won't. With our spring rains, they could rot out before they get a chance to grow.
Yeah.
Versus the cool weathers being planted in the summer, they go dormant in the summer, which is strange for us to think about. But so, there's definitely,
It's a consideration.
It is. One thing that I thought was interesting, I read a few years ago, was, we have the thing like plant in the fall and the months with a letter. Do you remember that? There's a month with, anyway, the letter M in them. I don't know. Because it was like September. I don't know. Anyway.
End in an R, maybe?
Maybe. I don't know. And I think that was one of the reasons that was started as a saying was, I mean, it is good for the plant, for trees specifically. But a lot of our trees used to be grown in the nursery industry in the ground and dug as bare roots. So they had to go dormant to be harvested, wrapped, and shipped to somewhere else. Now we grow in plastic pots. Good or bad, who knows? Let's not go into that. But it makes them much more movable and much more, the root zones are intact and much more diversified for planting. So you can plant an actively growing, blooming magnolia right now because that root zone is got enough to it to go into the ground and hang on while little root hairs grow to support the upper growth. So it's kind of an old saying, I feel like, to do that only fall planting, because our trees are containerized now. So you're not chopping them up and shipping them across. They've already grown to that.
Yeah.
So it's a little better transition for them.
And again, I mean, I think a line to draw here is like woody perennial things, trees and shrubs. Don't overthink it too much. But with a lot of the herbaceous perennials, grasses are kind of a even more extreme example. But a lot of the dormant herbaceous perennials, you do run the risk of rotting them if you plant in winter.
In the middle of winter.
Right, when they're just not doing anything. They haven't had a chance to spread their roots out, really. They're just kind of sitting there in that hole, and if it stays too wet and muddy, which often it does in the winter, you can lose an echinacea. You can lose a black-eyed Susan.
Earlier fall and later winter is totally fine for most of the native perennials and herbaceous perennials.
Yeah.
But then we get spring rains, and sometimes we can lose them from that. So,
Yeah. Well, another question that he asked that we get asked all the time is, let's see, let me find it. Everyone wants more privacy. What are some privacy options for our area? Are there any native options, drought-resistant options? What do you guys think? This is a tricky one.
Privacy.
This is the privacy question.
We just have too many people.
Or we just need to be better neighbors.
True. That's it. That was, much better.
But in answer to your question, hollies are my favorite. We do have some native hollies, American hollies, Foster hollies that do quite well in this area. Hollies tend to be tolerant of clay soils, which is mostly what we have. They are they're pretty drought tolerant once established, I would say.
Yeah.
Not right off the bat. I mean, that's worth mentioning. No matter how drought tolerant something is, you need to water it some for the first couple of years when we're having drought stress.
Yes.
I mean, even grasses,
It's
they're going to need a
tolerant,
little.
not proof.
Not immune. So, but I personally think that hollies are just about the toughest privacy hedges we have in this area. I mean, and again, there are some native options there.
I really love a mixed screen with, even some deciduous that are like densely branched mixed in there. But I feel like you see these lines of arborvitae and then you'll see some that die out in that line. I mean, sometimes it can be a good screen, but you will see some dieback in the heat of the summer or whatever. But I love a mixed so that if you do see something die out, you can replace it. It's not as mono. You're not looking for the right size plant to fit that little hole.
That's the resiliency that we're talking about.
Yeah, and I'm unwilling to totally trash arborvitae, but they do drink a lot of water in the summer. You've got to get some extra water on them. I mean, they're super fast growing, which is awesome, but when you do, another way to think about it, not just arborvitae, if you do a big long line of one thing, and then you lose one, you are kind of on the hook to replace that. Or just slowly watch your whole investment kind of wither away. So as the years go by and you lose a 15-foot tall green giant arborvitae, and then you call me and you say, hey, I want a 15-foot tall green giant arborvitae, I probably can't find you one that big, and if I can, it's going to be expensive.
Right.
So,
and it's not even good for the tree.
Yeah.
To take something that, that's a hard transplant.
And also not to mention the fact that it quite possibly died from like ceridium canker, which
is something that's going to happen again.
That's right.
I love the mixture of the different, like a magnolia mixed with you can do all the different textures and colors of green and blue, and even if you're not sticking with just native,
you want like the British hedgerow full of berries and hedgehogs.
Another one that it's a slender bud, so 4 to 6 foot wide, 15-foot tall is the Taylor juniper, which is
Yeah.
the eastern red cedar, but it is a little more blue-green, and it is just has more form to it.
Right.
Where our eastern red cedars can get quite fluffy and fat, and but
they are an option for a hedge also, and that is a true native to Northwest Arkansas, one of the only evergreens we
Yes.
have. So, I mean, that's actually...
just the straight species,
Yep.
eastern
Yeah.
red cedar,
Yeah, but a lot of the junipers that you'll see available in nurseries, they tend to be pretty tough. They tend to do well in our environment,
Yeah.
so...
Good
maybe,
option.
Maybe I would say most of the junipers are going to be better for our droughts than our floods.
100%,
until
yeah.
established, especially.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, and I like the deciduous screens too mixed in. I mean, I do have a neighbor that I can see, and we don't need complete privacy, but we do need a little. You know, we just
Yeah.
don't want to see in their drive or in their yard completely, and we just have I'm not even going to tell you what they are because they're a plant that has been there forever, but it is deciduous. So this time of year, it's Rosa Sharon. The previous owner,
Yeah.
my house was built in the
Yeah.
60s, and they went crazy with the Rosa Sharon, and it, of course, is reseeded everywhere. This is the bane of my existence at home sometimes, but it does provide a screen. Like
Yeah.
right now it's winter, there's no leaves on the trees yet, and I can't see my neighbor through them. So
Yeah.
it serves its purpose.
Yeah, a lot of times, even just our maples, once
Yeah.
they drop their leaves, that branching structure is a distraction from straight views
Yes.
into
Yes.
others' windows.
Yeah.
This is a timely topic for me. I need to plant some hedge plants. Just this morning, I was making coffee, and I look over, and my neighbor's just looking at me.
You just don't want to make eye contact. You
yeah,
just don't
like,
want that.
oh,
Yeah,
man.
you just need
Yeah.
that diffusion. Like they can tell somebody's back there, but they don't need to see what you're doing.
And also, grasses. Grasses
it's a good
our
one.
tall grasses can do that too.
Yes.
And be left up until they start growing, which is pretty soon now.
Yes.
And you'll have a month or so of no growth or no height, and then but so you do have a temporary openness. But if you are pruning them, if you're cutting them down as they need to be, but they're easy and
Yeah.
they're tall and fluffy, and so they can help distract.
Make a good
Yep.
make a good contribution to that
Yeah.
screen. So I think it's just all about working in several things. So.
Diversify.
Yeah, diversify. Well, I think that was pretty much all the questions that we got from customers. But is there anything you guys can think of that might help simplify things that we didn't touch on? I think we touched on soil and making the right plant selections are the really help.
I mean, I would just say, kind of as an overarching statement, Northwest Arkansas is tough.
Yeah.
We have relatively poor soils. That's why we did chickens instead of soybeans and cotton like the rest of the state. We do have extreme temperature swings over short periods of time, as well as just seasonally every year. It's kind of tough here, but it's totally doable.
Yeah.
If you, like you said, if you do your research, like I was saying, if you pay attention to enriching your soil in the proper way for the plants that you're putting in, if you pay attention to the environment, you can totally have a beautiful landscape, even though it is a little harder here than it is in Southeast Georgia or the Pacific Northwest. So,
Right. Yeah. And you don't have to give yourself 24/7 job just to upkeep
That's
your
right.
landscape. It's if you with a little thought, I think you can make it very manageable
Yes.
and beautiful.
And patience
Yeah.
and observation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's one of the greatest.
We have to learn as we go.
Yeah.
That's what gardening is.
it is.
Right.
It is.
Well, good ideas, good input, and thanks everybody for the questions. That was really helpful. So, all right. Well, thank you guys, and we look forward to seeing you next time.